Welcome back to my channel. If you've seen my recent videos, you'll know that I've got a competition running at the moment. A really great prize. We've got 10 kilos of bait from Richworth and 2 tubs of pop-ups and 2 bottles of dip. And also we've got a great package from Angling Iron, an end tackle bundle, and the whole prize I reckon is worth about £150. All you have to do is subscribe to enter, so don't forget to subscribe. Now this video, we've come down to my local day ticket. We've only got an overnighter, so it's about maybe 3 o'clock now. It's going to be dark in an hour and a half or so. We're in the middle of January and I've only got until about 10 o'clock tomorrow morning to hopefully catch a fish to show you, so pressure's on a little bit. I did get out last week and blanked unfortunately on my club lake, and the week before was the last video you saw where I had that nice 21 pounder, so you know, it's hit and miss as winter always is. This video I'm going to be talking to you about what's the best conditions for carp fishing in winter, what I look for when I'm planning a session. You know, I don't just fish as and when, I try and look for the right conditions and try and pick the lakes you know, depending on what conditions I've had, you know, leading up to the session and actually during the session. So stay tuned till a little bit later on in the video where we're going to be talking about, you know, conditions and kind of reading the right time to go fishing depending on the weather, etc. So yeah, that's the point of this video really. Just wanted to update you, the competition is still running. You know, there's still time to enter if you subscribe. I'm probably going to draw the winner perhaps sometime at the end of January, early February, something like that. So in a couple of videos time we're going to be drawing the winner of the competition in one of my videos. So you know, keep watching the videos as well, so you sort of don't miss the prize draw, because it could be you who wins it, and that's a great prize, as you've already seen. So yeah, as I said, we're coming into the evening. We've only got the night to try and catch a fish. I've got my 3 rods out on my normal pop-up rigs, with pink S-Core pop-ups that I've dyed myself at home, because they don't actually make a pink one, but pink's really good on this lake. So you know, I've gone to the extra effort and used a bit of the Richworth serum and a bit of red food colouring, just a tiny bit, and it's made them go a nice pink colour. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm gonna stick the kettle on as always, have a coffee or something like that, try and get over the hangover from last night. I'll talk to you about that later. And yeah, we'll update you if anything exciting happens. Right guys, I'm coming into the evening now. Well, it's not really evening, it's late afternoon, but as it's winter, you know, it starts getting dark early, so probably about 4:15. Imagine it'll be dark in the next half an hour or so. So yeah, I'm not going to do a lot of filming through the night unless of course I've got a fish to show you. Feeling pretty rough, as I said earlier. I've got a bit of a hangover. It's actually my birthday on Tuesday, so it's Sunday now, a couple of days till my birthday, but my missus surprised me on Saturday night with a surprise party. She said we were going out for a meal, so we sort of strolled out, going, I thought, to a restaurant, and then she said, oh, I've just got to pop in my mate's house to drop something off. So we went in and there was like 16 people there, sort of booze all over the table, ready to go. So yeah, ended up getting a little bit loose, if you like. Not trying to glamorise getting pissed, but you know, it's my birthday, so I can do what I want. So yeah, just trying to get over that. I'm hoping nice big fat winter carp's going to come along and help me get over my hangover. But if not, stay tuned till the morning, guys. We're going to be talking about kind of weather conditions for the winter, and how to sort of try and maximise on the conditions and when to fish, at least my viewpoint on it. But I'd be interested to hear anyone else's thoughts on weather conditions in the winter, and indeed any time of year, you know. But you know, I'm always interested to hear your comments, and thanks very much for the response on my last video. That was pretty good, you know. I think over 100 people commented on that one, so yeah, keep it coming, guys. I'm really interested to sort of hear everyone's thoughts. You know, any winter tips you want to share with everyone here, feel free, you know, and it'll help me out and hopefully help some other people out. And yeah, we'll show you a carp in the night if there is one to show you. And if not, we'll be chatting about the weather and my thinking behind it for the winter time anyway. So yeah, I'll stick some dinner on in a bit and keep both fingers crossed for the night. It's my birthday on Tuesday, so I feel like I deserve a carp. So yeah, let's see what happens. Hi guys. Yeah, I thought I'd just run you through before it gets too dark. Just run you through my sort of tactics for this session as well, because I always like to just kind of run through what I'm doing. Hopefully help you guys out on your fishing, you know, through the winter. So basically turned up to my day ticket lake and had a little stroll as I always do, and didn't really see anything. But you know, I don't really ever see anything this time of year, especially on this lake. You know, I've not seen a fish show in winter on here for the last sort of couple of winters anyway, so it's more about knowing the spots from previous sessions and, you know, working out which way the wind's blowing and where the sun's going to be shining and all that sort of stuff. So I've basically gone on an educated guess that there was a bit of sunshine today and it's kind of been shining into this corner of the lake, and I know there's a couple of nice spots out here that I've fished before, so I've kind of got my wraps written down in my notebook, so I know kind of how far to wrap my rods up. So yeah, that's what I've done. I've kind of gone in here, wrapped my rods up to my known spots for this swim, put out a little scattering of bait, you know, maybe sort of 15 or so for each rod, and then just cast out, hit the clip nicely, felt them down with a bit of a donk, using my semi-fixed inline lead setup, which you'll have seen in a previous video. I tend to use that all the time now for the lakes that I'm fishing, because I'm mostly fishing hard spots, so an inline works good on a hard spot, you know, doesn't sink into the silt, doesn't need to anyway, if you know what I mean. And the semi-fixed, you know, it means that the fish picks it up and feels the weight and hopefully sets the hook a bit and then shakes the head and it pulls it out, so they can't actually use the lead to drop it. So yeah, check out my video. I'll put a link below for how to make up my semi-fixed inline lead setup, using some really nice little components from Angling Iron actually, so I'll put their website below as well, so you can go check them out. And actually in my competition there's some Angling Iron bits up for grabs in the competition. Sorry about the birds, I always have to say this on this lake, but there's so many birds on here, they just make a noise and makes it hard for you to hear me. But anyway, yeah, so the competition, there's some Angling Iron bits to be won if you subscribe to the channel, so make sure you do subscribe. But you know, if you're interested in the bits that I use, check out, you know, the link to their website, and you can go see the sort of stuff that they sell. Their hooks are absolutely top notch, but I don't need to tell you that. Most people have used them. So yeah, so I've got my Withy pool rigs on with my pop-ups. I think I said earlier. You know, there's a bit of muck on the bottom around the spots, a bit of siltweed left over. It's not quite died off yet. So I've used pop-ups to kind of go over the top of that. And my last couple of sessions on here, I've done all right, you know, on the pop-ups. So I might as well stick with it. So yeah, my Withy pool rigs. I'll put a link to the video how to tie that down below as well. And yeah, like I said, just a little scattering of bait around it in a sort of area that I think the fish are hopefully going to be visiting at some point in the next 12 or so hours overnight. So yeah, we've not got an awful lot of time, as I said, on this session, but fingers crossed, and yeah, let's hope the night brings us a chunk. morning, guys. The inevitable has happened and we've had a very quiet night, unfortunately. It's just what happens at this time of year, you know, we can't catch every time we go, and it makes those captures that more rewarding when you do get lucky. I think on this session, you know, it's been cold. We've had a couple of warmer days before the session, but you know, previous to that it was fairly cold and the water temperature's down to 6 degrees, so the fish are fairly inactive, and because I've been concentrating on my club water as well, I've not been popping down in between sessions, so I've not really sort of put in the groundwork really and found the fish. So you know, I think I was asking a lot to nick a bite on an overnighter in January anyway, but you know, you can catch in those situations, and I did sort of last winter, you know, but this session hasn't been successful. But you know, who knows, next time I come I might have 2 or 3 fish, you just don't know. I think last January on here I had 2 30s and 5 20s and a couple of doubles as well, so an insane January really, but you know, we had big storms, we had double figure temperatures, and it was a very different story. So you kind of got to you know, play the conditions as they're dealt to you, and that leads me on, you know, nicely to the subject of this video really, is conditions for winter carp fishing. You know, what conditions do I look for, what conditions have I been most successful in, and you know, the conditions leading up to a session that I look for, and also during a session. So it's still quite early morning, it's not quite properly light yet. I'm just going to have some breakfast and a coffee and everything, and then we'll sit down and we'll go through kind of my thinking behind you know, winter weather and what sort of things I look for when planning a trip. So yeah, stay tuned, guys. Sorry I've not had any fish to show you yet, but the rods are still out, so there's always a chance. As always, fingers crossed. And yeah, I'll speak to you in a little while all about my thoughts on weather. Right, guys, just before we talk about, you know, my thought process on the weather in the winter for carp fishing, I just wanted to remind you quickly about that competition that we've got. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel, so hit the red button below the video, and you could win 10 kilos of Richworth bait plus pop-ups and dips, and a really good tackle bundle from Angling Iron. I've linked both the websites down below, so you can go check out their range of products. But yeah, literally just subscribe and you'll be entered into the prize draw. We're going to probably draw the prize towards the end of January, maybe early February, something like that. So keep an eye out on my channel for the prize draw if you have entered the competition, and stay tuned to hear my thoughts on winter weather. Right then, I've got my coffee. So weather then. I suppose the biggest factor in winter to consider is the water temperature, really. Not necessarily the weather outside, because the fish aren't living in the, you know, in the atmosphere like we are. They're under the water, so the water temperature is the biggest influence on the fish's behaviour and sort of feeding habits, I think. So the absolute ideal sort of scenario, if you like, leading up to a session would be maybe 3 or 4 days of kind of warmer temperatures, you know, above 10 degrees, and then during your session, if you suddenly got like a windy, you know, a southerly wind, southwesterly wind blowing, that sort of slight increase in the air temperature might have slightly increased the water temperature, and then that southwesterly wind, which is still quite a warm wind, will be blowing that sort of slightly warmer water down one end of the lake, and you can pretty much guarantee the fish are going to turn up on the end of it. And that's exactly what happened last winter. Over the sort of Christmas and New Year period, we had, I think, sort of 12 degrees most days, 13 on some days. It's pretty warm for December, January. And then my session, I think, was the 2nd of January, just after New Year, and we had Storm Eleanor, so we had winds of up to sort of 60 to 80 miles an hour. Temperatures at night were staying above kind of 10, I think, and you know, it just screams bites, doesn't it? And I began the year for 2018 with a double take, 2 20s, and I think I ended up with 5 fish that night, 4 20s and a 17 pounder. It couldn't have been more perfect, really, you know, for that session. The way I'd had the warmer weather, and then the big winds, you know, it's just ideal. But you can sort of fish in other conditions in winter and catch, and you know, I think my following session after that, it had gone cold again and we had a bit of a frost, and I just adapted my tactics slightly. I cut down on the bait a little bit, maybe used 6 to 8 freebies per rod, and that was it, you know, rather than sort of the 20 to 30 that I was using when the conditions were good. And also definitely worth considering on the colder days, where you've got clear skies, high pressure, you know, kind of flat, calm conditions, very much like we've got this morning. It's worth looking into, particularly Zig Fishing, and I'm actually going to do a video on that in the next couple of weeks, so keep an eye out on my channel, how I tie up my zigs, you know, my sort of thinking on the depths, where I like to fish the zigs, and, you know, different hook bait options, you know, the colour and all that. So we're going to be doing a video on zigs. It's not something I do an awful lot of, but it's definitely something worth turning to when conditions are tough, and actually in the summer it can be a brilliant tactic anyway. But yeah, so zig fishing's good when the conditions are tricky, but also don't neglect the margins as well. You know, in the winter you don't really associate that with margin fishing, but a couple of weeks ago I had that 21 pound scaly mirror out of my club lake, and I think the pressure was off the scale. It was like 1,040 degrees and temperatures were down to 2 degrees at night, and I just thought the fish are bound to be sort of looking for slightly shallower water with that high pressure. You know, they don't like being down deep because the water pressure's quite high down deep, and with the air pressure on top of that, it's kind of too much for their swim bladders, so they like to go a bit shallower just to kind of balance out the pressure. So they head, I think, into the margins or up in the layers. So, you know, your two options are zig rigs or kind of margin fishings, and that fish was taken quite close in over a very light scattering of bait, you know, and I must admit it was pretty jammy, I guess. Nice to get off the mark early in the new year, but you know, you can tell my thought process that went into it, and luckily that time it paid off. So other conditions in winter, you might get a couple of really sunny days, and that, you know, it happens a lot in the winter. You get those sort of flat, calm days that aren't that cold really, just a bit sunny, a bit flat, calm, you know, a bit sort of like average, if you like. But that sunshine really plays a factor again on the lake itself, and again the water temperature. And in those sort of situations leading up to a session, I'll be looking at the areas where the sun hits the lake for the longest amount of time. You know, sometimes you might get the sun on the lake for an hour before it's kind of moved round, and, you know, it doesn't really have that much of an influence. But if you've got an area where it gets the sun for the majority of the daylight hours, that area might potentially warm up by a couple of degrees. So, you know, it's worth walking the lake when you're not fishing at different times of day and see where the sun's pointing, and thinking about all these things, you know, whilst you're fishing, but in between your sessions as well, and always checking the weather and looking for these little periods where you've got slightly warmer weather and then like the winds come in. And, you know, if you've had big winds for a couple of weeks, like we did have a few winters ago, we had storms all winter, I don't think it has that much of an influence, like not such a drastic influence on the fish. You know, they might sort of get a bit settled into that, but you're looking for those changes where they're suddenly going to affect the fish, because sometimes when it's been flat calm for ages, the fish can lie quite dormant, and then you'll suddenly get a big wind and it stirs them up, you know, and as they're sort of moving, they need to eat to sort of replenish that energy that they're using. So you've got to think about all these things, and kind of experiment as you go along, you know, trying areas of the lake that you think the fish might turn up, and quite often they do, you know, but then carp are carp, and they sometimes have a mind of their own, and they'll turn up in places you don't expect. So, you know, always take your Polaroids with you, walk the lake, you know, binoculars, and try and find a fish. Snags are a good starting point in winter as well, you know, kind of whatever the conditions, snags can hold natural food and a bit of cover for the fish and make them feel quite secure while they're just sort of resting up. So you know, look at all these areas when you turn up at your lake and try and locate the fish, but it is very, very hard in the winter, so you've got to think about the weather as well. Rain in the winter can affect the fish as well. You know, if you've had a few colder days and then suddenly you get like a southerly wind and rain, that sort of extra water going into the lake, it can push the fish up in the layers again. You know, the change in temperature, the fish sort of look to balance the temperature and find like a warmer area, and they can sometimes move up in the layers because of the colder water going into the lake and things like that. And you know, it's sort of really depends on the water temperature, as I've said, and so I always take a thermometer with me. When I turn up, the first thing I do is check the temperature, and then I can kind of plan my session around that. You know, how much bait to use, where I think the fish are likely to be. If the water's suddenly warmed from a previous session, you know, I'm looking to get on the end of the wind because I think they follow it as the water's increasing in temperature. If the water's dropped in temperature and we've got northeasterly winds, you might want to look for areas of shelter, areas on the back of the wind, that sort of thing. But you know, don't discount any area. Always investigate the whole lake really when you're fishing if you can. Try and look at how other people go about, you know, their approach, and if they're being successful, you know, talk to people, but also talk to the lake owners, because a lot of the time they'll be sort of experts of their own water. You know, they spend the most time there out of anyone, don't they? So yeah, don't discount kind of the people that run the places, you know, the bailiffs and anyone else that's sort of involved. So yeah, I think that's kind of covered everything. I mean, it's fairly straightforward, my approach. You know, I look for the warmer days, I look for the windier days. I hate the flat calm conditions. I find it's, you know, really scratching time when it's like that, and it's difficult to get a bite really, but it does sometimes happen, and if that's the only time you can get out fishing, then do it, because you know, you never know, you've always got a chance while the rods are in the water. So as far as this session goes, the rods are still out. I don't know if you can just see down there. They'll be out till absolute last knockings when I've got to leave about 10ish, I think the lake's booked for a couple of guys coming on, so I'll have to be off, and I've got some jobs to do and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll start packing down in a minute and hopefully get down next week. Not sure what the conditions are doing, but I'll be making sure to check every day so I can sort of think about where the fish are going to be for my next session.